Hey guys, King of Charmanders here. Alright, so Payback finally got released and revealed by the Pokeminers, and it's pretty interesting, I would say. Like, yeah, it's interesting. So, here's a little history about Payback. So, Payback actually came out in Generation 4, as you see here. So, the move in the main series game does this. If the users attack first, the power doubles. As you see, it has 50 power, 100 accuracy, and 10 move usage, which is the PP, which is max is 16. So it's a physical attack, and it doubles its power if it's attacked first. So Payback is, I think, competitively, from where I remember in the main series game, Payback had some use because it has coverage, etc. But I don't know if it was like ever meta relevant, etc. like back in the day. But this is the old school move. A lot of Pokemon do learn it, and like I said, it was introduced in Generation 4. And now we have the reveal. So the Pokeminers finally pushed and revealed the stats about Payback for MACHAMP. So for PvE, as you see here, it does 100 damage, 100 energy, 2.2 damage. Damage starts and like so for PvE, it's actually not that bad. It lets you punch through things like Metagross, etc. if you're rating it. For PvP, it's 110 damage for 60 energy. So that's a lot. It hits really hard. So this will likely probably kill a DD at full power it'll likely kill a DD, or like either like mostly kill it if it lands on like a psychic type Pokemon, psychic against ghost, etc. The issue, we'll talk about the issues later, but from first peek, it looks like a pretty good move. It gives Machamp coverage against psychic types and against its other weaknesses like psychic, its ghost types, which do resist it as well. And I think that's really it from what I remember. I'm gonna go deeper into it as I move on the video, but not bad from an initial perspective, and it's, with Machamp's power, it's a pretty scary move if you get hit with it. Alright, so the biggest question here is Payback versus Rockslide. As you see here, with Payback, you are super effective against Psychic and Ghost Pokemon. Coupled with Machamp's ridiculously high attack, it's likely if you land a Payback on something, you're probably going to one-shot it. Now, the thing about Payback is that while you cover your weaknesses, the thing about Machamp, you don't want to leave Machamp in a matchup with, per se, a Confusion Hypno or a Charmer. Where, pretty much that's what it is. You don't want to leave it in there because your counters that you do, your fighting damage, is still double resisted by whatever ghost it is. And Psychic still does resist you. So Psychic can tank your counters unless you can hit unless you can hit Payback. Does it give you that extra scare? Absolutely. But as you see here, you only cover Psychic and Ghost. So you only cover 2 typings, which isn't really a lot, as you see across the box spectrum here. Now, Dark Moons aren't very effective against fighting Dark and Fairy types, which means Scrafty is, well, you're gonna cross-chop Scrafty to death, but it's basically, Umbreon is probably another one, but like, you don't really have to worry about the not very effective thing, because for the Dark, as far as Dark type goes, you have Cross Chop. So Cross Chop is going to cover the Dark type coverage. So the 2 biggest concerns are fighting and Fairy. You're not going, if you see a fighting Pokemon, unless it's meta, even if it's like Medicham, you're probably going to pay back something like that because it has a Psychic type and does like neutral damage. But you're not gonna, in a normal fighting type, you're not going to pay back it. You're just gonna Cross Chop it to death. The big thing here is Fairies. So with the Fairy typing, if you do have a Machamp with Payback and Cross Chop, you are gonna get walled. You're essentially walled. If you're not gonna die to all the charms, you're just gonna get walled because Payback and Cross Chop are resisted, and you don't get stabbed either. So that's another thing. But like I said, other than having to be really careful about Fairy types, it's pretty dang powerful. It's essentially a Outrage clone, and it's being able to cover your weaknesses is never so bad. I'll go over more of like more about the attack later. But that's Paybacks, and this is Rockslide. So with Rockslide, rock moves are super effective against fire, ice, flying, and bug types. And they're not very effective against fighting, ground, and steel. Like I mentioned before, you are not going to use a dark type or a rock type against a fighting type. You're probably just going to use cross drop. So that leaves fighting out the road. Ground and steel is also like taken care of by like cross chop, so you don't have to worry about it too much. And most of the time, you're probably going to cross chop ground types anyways. So as you see here, rock types are super effective against fire, ice, flying, and bug. So the thing about that is that with Rockslide covers 2 more typings, and yeah, it covers 2 more typings, and fire, ice, flying, bug, flying especially is pretty relevant in the Go Battle League meta. Not only that, Rockslide does take less energy, and it takes less energy, and it's not too much of a cost if you bait with it per se. But that's basically the pros. The cons of Payback is that the pros of Payback is that you cover the weaknesses, but like as far as Rockslide goes, you have more coverage against a lot of other things. Does that make sense? So what do I think about MACHAMP with Payback? I think it's a really good move, but the issue is, okay, so fighting, so here's counters. Well, so obviously, you could use counter, but you could also use cross chop. As you see here, you want to use counter in general because your damage is 8 and it does a lot of damage, okay? You do a high amount of damage, you generate 1 less energy than karate chop, but the extra damage is worth it, which is why you can counter down so many things. So on hindsight, in order for you to fire a Payback, which is 60 energy, you need to do 8, let's see, so 7, I'm trying to math in my head right now. 7 times 7 is 49. Why am I doing math? 56, 64. So you have to do 9 counters before you actually hit a Payback. Which in hindsight isn't that bad because it only takes, if you look at Rockslide takes 7. So the pros of Payback is that it does a lot of damage. It's very like I'll do a like analysis on it, but it's able to cover it's gonna cover like 2. If it's not really, Ghost isn't a weakness of fighting. However, you're at a disadvantage because fighting is double resisted by Ghost. So in a sense, you are at a disadvantage. You have coverage against Ghost and you have coverage against Psychic types. So that's good in a sense because a lot, like the Ghost and Dark archetype is actually very prominent in Go Battle League. The issue is the energy. Because with Rockslide, it takes 7 cross chops, so 7 times 7 is 49. So it only takes 7 cross chops for you to get there. I mean 7 counters for you to get to a Rockslide. So this would be most effective if you can land it. 60 energy is a lot of, it's a lot of energy in hindsight. If you land the move, it's great. If you don't, it's really bad per se. And the issue is without the Rockslide coverage, you don't cover the weakness. You don't cover, the cons is coverage. You cover double the typings with Rockslide. And with Rockslide, you can cover flyers, which are prominent in Go Battle League as well. So depending on what type your team covers, it's great. This gives you the ability to essentially, like, what you can do is leave MACHAMP in the back, put your opponent down shields, and then just Payback whatever in front to oblivion. The issue is with Payback is that for Psychic types, especially for like Hypno, you don't want to get hit by a move from a Psychic. It's very dangerous, especially if you're using Shadow Champ, to play the game of I will live long enough to get to a Payback. And if your opponent has a shield and they shield it, you're going to get farmed down anyways. So it's really just the existence of confusion that makes Payback kind of really risky. At the same time, if you're about to do something like a Deoxys defense, if the Deoxys defense Psycho boosts you, Psycho boost is only 35 energy. So a lot of Psychic type moves will outpace Payback. That's just the issue. So Payback is a great move. It's going to take a ton of skill to use though. And my first hindsight of it, I think it's great. However, you need to make it for a very specific with MACHAMP, because without Rockslide, you essentially don't have coverage against Azu. Azu will wall you. And it just takes a lot of energy to get to. So it's a very it's good, but it's a situational move where if you blast through shield, it's amazing. However, it puts you in a lot of bad spots. For me, I'm 50-50 about it, if you want my honest opinion. I think the move is great. I think it does a great amount of damage, covers relevant things, but like there's a lot of scenarios, the ones like I mentioned, that really make it a really big question mark. Because if they shield your payback, you just lost 60 energy. And that's a lot of 60 energy is a lot of energy to get shielded. And even though Machamp does charge quickly, depending on what you're up against, and they know you have payback now. Now, for example, if your opponent knows you don't have Rockslide, and you hit them with payback, then you're just like, oh. And they're like, okay, now they know, and then they can prepare for later. So it really just depends. It's a great move regardless. It's good to see Machamp getting some Dark type coverage. However, I'm going to have to see the actual data, but even then, like I said, just because of that energy cost, that's what makes it a little iffy on my book. Not good, not bad, but definitely like half and half in my opinion. If you guys like this video, please like and subscribe. I'm pretty excited that Machamp is getting some love, especially because Payback gives it some excitement, and Machamp has been just a beast for so long. And it gives you a chance. Machamp Community Day will give you a chance to get your own Payback Machamp, and a good one for PvP. Because unless you nest or it's cloudy weather, you can't really find any good Machamps around. Good luck on your Go Battle League sets, and I'll see you guys in the next video.